Hello and welcome to the start of a new podcast, as if we didn't already have enough going on. Um, and this is going to be an interesting one. It's just me and Johnny for this series of episodes. I don't know how many we're going to do, um, but I quite like this idea. It was Jonathan who came up with it. I can't quite remember where he got the idea from, but he told me about it, and I was quite excited to give it a go and see where it leads. What was your idea, Jonathan, that you ran by me?
Um, Both of us sort of well, it's always picking any music video and then just overanalyzing it essentially. Because I was just, trawling through. It's something I hadn't done for a while, really, just kind of looking through music videos and checking them out for songs I'd found interesting. And I came across one that just had such mad, insane imagery. I was just like, I can sit down and pull a random story out of this, and there's it's complete nonsense, but I feel like there's some interesting stuff to discuss here. And I was like, who can I rope into discussing mad things with me? And
The only other person that you know who likes music videos on this podcast.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, I don't know about Tony, but Harry's made his views very clear on how he feels about music videos many times. So I think it was a good call to do this, just us two, because I can't
hmm
imagine these episodes being particularly long. We're just picking two music videos for songs that I presume that we both like, and we're just going to talk about the videos, a bit about the song, kind of things that we like, and that'll be the episode. How does that sound?
yeah. No, that sounds good.
Okay, great. The first music video that I picked was the music video for probably my favourite song of all time. And I maybe should have saved it for the last episode of this that we do, but I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to just kick it off with a bit of a bang for me, especially considering we don't know how many of these episodes that we will do. We might just do this one and say, you know what, that wasn't very great. Let's just not do another one. And then I would have been happy that this is the song that I picked. And I was thinking about when I first heard this song, and it took me a while to actually remember, but I did. It was a schoolmate that we both know, and I remember the exact place we were in when he told me about the song. We were in the school gym, in the changing rooms, waiting to go and do an exam. I think it was during a mock period or something like that. And I'd recently gotten into Nirvana, and it's no shock that Nirvana is one of my favorite bands, if not my favorite. I've been listening to them for years. They really got me into rock music when I was first learning electric guitar. It was their songs I was playing that taught me the basics. It's very very easy stuff to learn. Nirvana, they're not a band that you listen to and walk away thinking, well, that was very technically impressive music, because they're not about that. They're about something entirely different. And a lot of their songs are just kind of power chords fed through a very very distorted amp with pretty basic bass line and some good drums. But though that's many of their songs, so if you're learning guitar properly for the first time and you need a band to listen to, they were perfect for me. And I'd listened to most of the Nevermind, which we actually did pick for the podcast, and that's one of my favourite albums of all time. But I hadn't really listened to any songs from any of their other albums, any of their other work. But this guy, he told me, listen to Heart Shaped Box. That's a great song. It's everyone goes on about Smells Like Teen Spirit to death, but this song is where Nirvana shines through. And sure enough, I went away and listened to it, and I remember so clearly I was just lying in bed with my earphones in, and around that time I would normally go to sleep listening to music, and I listened to this song for the first time, and it really really stuck with me. It resonated with me quite deeply, and I listened to it once and twice and three times. I listened to it over and over again. I think the first time I heard it that night, I must have listened to it again 10, 11, 12 times afterwards, just the same 4.5 minutes or so. It made an impact on me. And I think to this day, what really appeals to me about this song is the fact that when I write my music, and I do it from time to time, mostly lyrics rather than sitting down and actually writing an instrumental part, but the lyrics that I write, I feel are very, very very inspired by the lyrics in this song. One of the things that we talked about when we did Nevermind was how Nirvana's music's very dissonant, right? That they weren't about trying to play music that was the most pleasant sounding in the world. They were about doing something different. And I've always been more attracted to dissonance than something that I guess sounds more brighter and more warmer in sound. I think the lyrics that Cobain came up with really complement that a lot, and I don't see his work any better than I do in this song. I really feel like you don't think of Nirvana as a very poetic band because of what their sound is, what it's like, how it's just, crunching guitars, a lot of feedback. But I really, really think Cobain was a poet. He's one of my favorite lyricists, and I think in this song, and what I'll talk about in the music video a second, is the lyrics are very, very pungent, and they're very, very vivid. And, you don't need a song to back the lyrics with. The lyrics stand by themselves. They paint a very, very very strong picture about something. What that thing is 100%, I'm not sure. I have my own ideas, but everything about it, from the nuance, from the fact that Cobain doesn't hit you with a message, really doesn't hit you with an idea. He just kind of paints the scenery. He paints a landscape in your head. Not always, of course, but I've always liked that about his work. Doesn't really want to give you all of the information. He doesn't want to tell you what it is he's feeling, but rather instead kind of gives you a range of emotions and a range of images in your head in particular that paint something a little bit better. And I think the song the music video itself absolutely comments that. I mean, when I first watched the music video, I was walking away thinking, wow, for a video from the early 90s, the colours are so bright and they contrast with each other in such a stark way, don't you think?
Yeah, it is this sort of weird, almost dreamscape that is sort of created throughout.
100%.
Yeah.
Again, some of the images that you see, I mean, they're very abstract. It's not like the kind of thing, you don't just walk down the road and see an old man, a frail old man being crucified wearing a Santa Claus hat, right? It doesn't happen. There are a lot of, I guess, characters, if you want to call them that, in this music video that are just, yeah, I mean, you're right that they belong in a dream world, and I think it does have a lasting effect after you've watched it. So among this character on the cross, who people say is Jesus, in a lot of the comments that you read about the music video, there's a young girl wearing, white robes that look like a KKK outfit. And there's also a large woman at some point in the music video wearing what looks like a meat suit or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how you describe it. I'm just going off of what I've sometimes read, and they talk about it being a meat suit. And you have these kind of characters that sort of, I guess, inhabit this kind of world, and of course the band members are there for the choruses mainly, and the final verse as well. But it's not just that, it's the entire landscape, the way the colours kind of pop out of the screen, There'll be an image of hat that the young girl is wearing flying across the screen past a group of these really, really nice blue butterflies, and the hat will land in a pool of what looks like the blackest liquid you've ever seen, and the whole hat just becomes black. It goes from white to black in an instant. And there's also the forest with these really, really strange fruit hanging off of some of the leaves that look like they have amphibians inside the fruit as well. It's just an incredibly backwards world that you get to be in for about, I don't know, 4.5 minutes. It's really, really cool if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, what it nails is this sort of half real, half fake sort of look. So the crows that are there atop of the cross, they're mechanical and fake, but I don't know, it's so between the two almost. And those butterflies that you mentioned are like very obviously just kind of on strings that are kind of being dragged along. But that sort of fakeness to it, there's no feeling of, oh, this was a cheap or shoddy effect. It's like no, this is part of the like almost deliberate fakeness of it. This kind of slightly off world that is sort of being done.
Yeah, Nirvana didn't really do many music videos. I mean, that is partly because their career didn't last particularly long because the lead singer committed suicide, but they didn't have music videos like this. I mean, I'm thinking back to other ones. Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's a pretty ordinary music video. It's just a bunch of people in a gym really playing a song. Band is, of course, there, and there's cheerleaders and stuff like that. And it's obviously a very famous, iconic video from around that time that I'm sure most people have seen now. But it doesn't, I don't know, it's not doing anything unique. And I think Lithium, if I remember, is just a series of, like a montage of them just playing live performances, really. It's just kind of, well, I don't know, was there really a point to this music video? Are you telling us a story? Are you telling us anything about the band? I'm sure there are people out there that would disagree with that. And I remember Come As You Are's music video has some nice imagery, especially because I think about, when I think about Nirvana and I kind of close my head and I think about the sort of images that come to mind, there's a lot to do with life. And by life, I mean existence and being born and the creation of life. And Come As You Are, I'm pretty sure has, and also actually the end of life as well is a big thing, of course. The events that happened in real life really mirror that in a lot of poignant ways when you go back and watch some of their music videos and of course watch interviews and you know a lot about the band. But in Come As You Are, there's I'm pretty sure there's a shot of what looks like a sperm on a microscopic level. I'm not 100% sure about that, but a heart-shaped box really has that as well. I mean, there are, and it's part of that really vivid poetry that I'm talking about, where he talks about this heart-shaped box. Well, what is the heart-shaped box? I know a lot of people think that a heart-shaped box is something that's actually inside of you. It's where you're born. And there's of course that line about the umbilical cord. It's such a great line, and it's just certain lines like that. I think they're quite. It's risky, if you ask me, to write a line like that. I don't know. There are so many songs out there that I listen to, and I think, well, these lyrics are not doing anything interesting. I remember when we watched that anime that Tony made us watch, Symphogear. And it felt like every single line was just a huge cliche. I'd heard this line before a million times. Oh, your smile is like a sunshine. Okay, great, brilliant. But this song, I mean, to me, it's about love. I know the biggest interpretation that people have is it being about his wife, Courtney Love. In real life, after Cobain was died, she often talked about how a lot of the songs were about her. This one especially, and about their relationship. And I just think that when I read some of these lines about the tar and the fly trap, and I just think, wow, it's such a, I mean, there's something almost putrid about this. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's very beautiful. This idea of being drawn into a magnet tar pit trap, I think is the line. The astrological lyrics about Pisces and Cancer as well, and Cancer having, I guess, a double meaning as well, especially if you watch the music video too, because it of course starts and ends with a man seemingly on his deathbed, and it's just all these cool little moments that, I mean, they really, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but they really just paint a very, honestly, I think the word vivid is so right. And there's the line about broken hymen of your highness, of course. A hymen being a part of the anatomy of the female genitalia as well. Just all of these really kind of interesting lyrics that I just don't see very often in a lot of songs, I guess, especially songs from nowadays, where I kind of feel like a lot of these lyrics are just very generic, whereas Cobain back in the early 90s, he was writing quite risky lines about all sort of things. I mean, especially you think that the fourth track after this song on the album is literally called Rape Me. And actually, the last line that I was talking about is how he describes the umbilical cord being a noose, something that strangles you rather than something that you're attached to when you come out of being born. So I think a lot of the imagery, especially about birth and death, really just feels very profound to me, and the chorus especially. Just that fantastic hook of about having a complaint, being in debt to someone's priceless advice, and who that advice has come from. It's something that I do think about when I listen to this song. Had you seen it before? I talked about it.
I don't think I had. I think this is my first time seeing the music video. Yeah, I had listened to the song quite a few times before, and I think, sort of furthering on with what you've said about the lyrics, it manages to not seem like someone being sort of edgy for the hell of it, or just kind of whining, which is sometimes how, if you're trying to get this sort of, I don't know, topic, I guess, is hard to do. But yeah, there's definitely a lot, I feel, of it's sort of merging of, well, yeah, ideas of life and death, basically. And I think it's the line that most encapsulates it is sort of the talking about the umbilical cord and it being a noose. It's this symbol of life, and also like the most pressing symbol of death.
Yeah.
And I think that also is something you have, that makes its way through into the music video, with this sort of young girl and old man kind of symbolism there.
I agree with what you were saying, and I think a lot of it's not just the lyrics. I think the lyrics, of course, play a big part in how they're written, and there's a real authenticity to that. But of course, in real life, there are so many people out there, so many artists that create their work, and it is edgy, and you get this impression that it's, like you said, edgy for edginess' sake because you want to resonate to someone and you want to connect with someone, but at the same time, it doesn't really have a sense of genuineness, I guess, to it.
Yeah, you've got sort of cringe edginess, and then you've got, I guess, sort of more like raw edginess.
Exactly, and I really really love this man a lot. I've watched 2 3 documentaries about him. I've been listening to his music since I was about 14 years old, 14 15 maybe. And I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in the world he was a very very deeply disturbed person. You know, something that I've known about for a while now is actually, maybe this is a bit more kind of edgy for edginess' sake, but in Utero's original album name was gonna be called, I think, I Hate Myself and I Want to Die, which is actually one of the titles of a song on one of the bonus tracks if you get one of the deluxe editions of the albums. So that's actually an example of when he is being very, very upfront about something and very, very direct. Whereas I think a lot of what makes Heart Shaped Box really, really great for me, and what I kind of try and replicate in my own songwriting, is first of all painting a landscape, which I think the lyrics do, and the music video definitely does. But also being kind of lost in almost subconscious thoughts, and not being so upfront and straightforward about it, not just saying kind of the first thing that comes to your mind, trying to play around with it a little bit, trying to find double meanings and ways of taking something that a lot of the time is, implied to be a very, very beautiful and fantastic thing in life, but then kind of sort of tainting it a little bit with subtle words and things like that, and it's something that I try and incorporate in my work. I mean, there's also the line about the meat-eating orchids, cutting himself on angel hair and baby's breath. I mean, it's just unique songwriting. It's unique songwriting. I don't see words like this often. I know I've said this before quite a few times, but I really just wanted to reiterate that a lot of the appeal to this, a lot of the appeal of this band to me is in the words that he comes up with. And a lot of the time it's not easy for me to say, oh, that's extremely relatable. Yeah, I can completely sympathize with that. I've been through exactly what he's going through. Because a lot of the time I'm not quite sure what he's talking about. I just like kind of being there in his world for a few minutes as he sings about just these really, really, I don't want to use the same word again. I guess really kind of evocative, and I guess quite lucid lyrics. And I think the music video just absolutely backs up the stuff that he says in the song and his sentiments about a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the visuals that we've mentioned from this video that sort of demonstrates that kind of twistedness you were sort of saying is when that white hat does fall in this dark puddle and then becomes black, and then that's then transformed into being like this mourning dress now, as this sort of little girl is over the hospital bed of this old man. That's one of the moments that did kind of stand out to me, of this just sort of sudden change from perhaps like white and innocence, even though that whole dress ensemble is very reminiscent of KKK, which is a whole other kettle of fish. Anyway, take just the idea of like a white dress, and then it's transformed into this sort of mourning dress, sort of sadness and all of this. I think that's one of the strong visual moments of it. And to me, that's kind of when some of the, not kind of all of it, but like chunks of this music video all kind of fell into place. It was just like, oh, this is a sort of mourning of a loved one type thing, or like it's sadness of the suffering of a loved one. And I think that's another thing that's really encapsulated, because there's a line that's like, eat your cancer.
I was just thinking that, the whole how the hat changes into such a dark colour, and the line being, I wish I could eat your cancer when you turn black.
Yeah. To me, it's a sort of, it's suffering through the suffering of someone that you love, I think I think, to me, mostly because like that's one of the big lines that stands out to me, and so that's what I've kind of attached to as the meaning of this song for me, is it's way suffering kind of follows through, and then that's the way it impacts you when someone that you love is struggling. and yeah, how you sort of wish you could do these impossible things.
Hmm. I think that's enough about Heart-Shaped Box. Should we move on to your pick for this episode?
Yeah, so I went for Lazarus by David Bowie, which came out, well, the music video came out 3 days before he died. And it's one of those things, because I remember when this album sort of first dropped and like listening to a few of the songs and sort of not entirely knowing what it was about, and then kind of heading back to it after he died, you're then just like, oh, I see exactly what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how did I not see you when I first looked at that? But no, it's a very powerful song. The music video version is a much shorter version of the song.
Yeah.
But to me has, well, I picked it because of its sort of similarities to a heart-shaped box in a way. Although it's kind of through a different lens in that one of the things that is captured in a heart-shaped box is the suffering of Kurt Cobain, a young man who didn't make it past 27.
Yeah. He's part of that famous club that people sometimes talk about, the 27 Club, where a lot of other young artists unfortunately died. Really, really famous ones. I think Amy Winehouse is a member. There's a couple of other really, really famous ones as well. I'll find out for you.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, mainly.
Yeah, whereas David Bowie is one of those figures that kind of managed to escape that, really. I think there was potentially times in his life where he might have been heading for, with the kind of life that he led, might have been heading for something similar, I think. But anyway, this is a very interesting one, since it's sort of another person, I guess, contemplating death, but in a very different sort of way and with a different relationship to it. Sort of taking something from the Heart-Shaped Box music video, it's what that old man on the cross is thinking, I'd say, is what Lazarus is. Especially because going back to Heart-Shaped Box, which I really shouldn't do, I saw a comment that was saying on the music video that the actor they had playing that role was someone with cancer, and they had to get rushed off to hospital during one of the shoots. And then they linked to an article, but the article was behind a paywall, so I cannot confirm or deny.
All right. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, when you watch the music video, I think frail was the right word to use when I said it. He just looks so skinny and just a very, very fragile human being. Like, if you dropped him, he would just snap to pieces.
Yeah. These are two. If that piece of trivia is to be believed, then these are two music videos featuring prominently a man with cancer close to death. So the opening line of this song is something along the lines, I really should have the lyrics opened up in front of me, but I don't. But it's like, look up, I'm in heaven. It's that kind of...
Yeah, look up here, I'm in heaven. I think that's right.
Yeah, which is such a powerful line. Maybe even more powerful that, like, that's where he is. One of the songs after his death that sort of stuck with me was Starman, because it kind of had that similar vibe. And this one is just like, to hell with any like pretense of a starman. I mean, obviously that was much earlier on when he wasn't thinking about these things, or I don't know. But yeah, so this one is very on the nose of, I'm no longer here.
I mean, what a way to kick off a song as well, when you think about it being the opening line. I mean, he's pulling punches from the first couple of words.
Yeah. And all the visuals, so it's mostly him lying in bed with this blindfold round with sort of two buttons where the eyes are, which gives just this really haunting look.
Yeah, and especially with his grey hair that looks like the hair of someone who's been electrocuted. You know how it frizzles up. I mean, he just looks like a mad scientist lying in bed there.
Yeah.
So it's great. And those two buttons for eyes, they actually, when I first saw them, they reminded me a lot of that children's, loosely children's cartoon, Coraline. It's quite a scary thing I watched when I was younger. I really, really liked that film a lot. But in that film, a young girl basically finds a way to go to an idyllic version of her own house where her parents are there, but her parents have buttons for eyes.
Yeah, it is impressive just how, I don't know if it's just because it's the association with dolls, and dolls are just inherently creepy, but there is just something slightly unnervy about that. And as well, beginning of the music video is kind of, has some of those almost like gentle horror moments, because it begins with this sort of face emerging from this cabinet, and you can't really tell what it is. and then you next see it's under his bed as the sort of camera sort of arches over, and just every sort of angle is so, I don't know, it's so well picked that there's moments where you can't tell which way's up and which way's down, because there's moments where it feels like he's almost standing in this bed rather than that he's lying down in it.
I think it's because of the way the camera moves as well. It has that very rotating feel to it, where it starts up somewhere and kind of comes down, and you almost feel like you're inside a glass ball and it's just kind of spinning.
Yeah.
But a little bit like, do you remember the first Times music video? Pulp, that's the kind of vibe that I got for that one shot where it kind of starts above him and sort of rotates around him.
It was very nice to see that kind of technique and shot used in another thing into such a kind of different. I mean, it's similar in that it's sort of not quite make you dizzy, but sort of disconcert you, I guess. But sort of a very different way.
Completely. I think those are the perfect words to use. In the Pulp music video, you're right. It's about being dizzy. It's about remembering a whirlwind in your life, almost, where things were kind of crazy. And, well, I guess dizzy is just the perfect word for this. Whereas in this music video, because of how slow it is and how creepy the atmosphere is, it's a very, very chilling shot, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I guess if I want to get gently poetic about it, it is sort of losing your ground sort of thing when hearing such big news. Like, I mean, although at the time of this music video he didn't know it was terminal cancer that he had, but obviously it's nothing I've ever experienced. But yeah, that kind of losing what you thought would support you, almost, that you sort of get from that sort of disorientating effect, I think is really powerful and really fits with what I imagine this music video is going for. And it very interestingly sort of, to me at least, I feel there's then a transformation in the second part where, well, it begins with this David Bowie without the blindfold on. He starts off with his little jaunty dance. It's really quite funny movements he manages to do, but it's sort of he does feel at times like this really alien figure just throughout his life.
Yeah, he does. Funnily enough, given the circumstances of this music video and what was going on around it, there's actually a lot of life in those moments where you kind of almost see, oh, this is the David Bowie from when he was just a young man doing these kind of dance moves, that there is still something flowing through his veins, something almost comical when you see it as well. It's quite pleasant, actually.
Yeah, that is what I see with that character of him without the blindfold. It's him, it's his creativity, it's all his ideas that he has and hasn't been able to do, and all the energy he still has and wants to use. And you then sort of have, because eventually this character sits down on a desk with a book and is sort of writing all these notes sort of hurriedly as if he's not got the time, and he just keeps on going. He sort of slips past the book and starts writing on the side of the table, and it's just this sort of hurried, frenzied, like, I've got to get this out, I've got to get this done.
Yeah, there's a desperation to it, isn't there?
Yeah, and then eventually it ends with that character having to sort of slowly walk backwards into the cabinet and is lost in the dark.
Yeah, the same cabinet that other character emerged out of in the first shot of the music video, and I like it when things do that, because you almost feel there's a symmetry in what's going on. How something comes out of this cabinet at the beginning, this kind of strange figure, and then at the end it kind of has the exact same shot but in reverse, and it's now David Bowie who's kind of retreating back into the closet. It makes you wonder the relationship, whether literal or metaphorical, between David Bowie and this figure that kind of stalks his room.
Yeah, because that's the thing I think I have the most mystery about from this music video, is sort of what is that figure? Is it some sort of portent of death, or is it kind of more of a nurse figure? Is some of the vibes I get when it's under the bed. It's sort of the outfit, I think. But to me, at least, if I was making a guess, it's this kind of sort of moulding of nursing and healthcare, but in the way that it's kind of connected to like death and the sort of creepiness it has when it's sort of raising the hand over the bed and sort of emerging from this sort of, I guess, dark closet you don't think about. The sort of idea almost from BoJack Horseman, the door where it's just blackness behind it. You keep that locked and you don't think about what's on the other side, but you hear this news from a nurse or whatever, or doctor, and it's now you have to open that door. You have to think what's on the other side.
Yeah.
That's the idea I get from it.
Yeah, I definitely do see that. Do you know who Lazarus was? He was a character from the Bible. I'm pretty sure he was dead, and Jesus brought him back to life. I think a few days afterwards. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3. Might have even been more.
Yeah, that's the sort of the thing I associate with Lazarus is kind of being brought back from the dead. That's the kind of connotation it has, and I guess it comes from the Bible.
Yeah, is there not also a because the other thing that I associate with Lazarus is the Lazarus pit, right? And I don't know if I'm confusing Lazarus with something else now, but is the Lazarus pit not in Greek mythology where Kronos is sent down to? Is that called the Lazarus pit?
I think so, from a quick Google. Because it's also in Batman, because some of the characters there are immortal, and that's how they're immortal, is this sort of Lazarus pit.
Yeah.
I think it's also comes up in Doctor Who. I think there's a Dr. Lazarus who creates this project. I think the idea is to get him back to make him immortal, but it just turns him into a monster. So it's all through not popular, like modern and old media. It's an idea that keeps on cropping up and is, yes, I guess, really associated with death, living again, perhaps sometimes then like a fear of death almost. Yeah. So my thought, without having properly delved into other people's thinking of why it's called Lazarus, to me it's him kind of rushing out to create this sort of final album as like a farewell, just to get out some of his last ideas. Seems to me in some way to be that kind of Lazarus pit. It's sort of, here is a way I can live on, that a part of me can continue on. I mean, he's already a man that has such a legacy, but to have some of those final moments, perhaps work with a few of the people that he really wanted to work with, and almost be kind of, I guess, born again, is my guess as to why the song is called Lazarus.
I think that's spot on. I think that's an absolutely valid interpretation. You know, I was looking at other people who were in the 27 Club. I saw Jimi Hendrix was here, and I could have sworn that I looked up to see if he was in this recently, and it said that he wasn't, because he was 30 when he died, but here it says that he was 27, so I must have either dreamt that or made it up. But there's also Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison from The Doors. I mean, really, really big names from the kind of early rock, late blues sort of era. Maybe not blues as such. I guess blues rock, if you want to call it anything. And then there's Kurt at 27. It's very, very sad when you have a look at because for some reason on Wikipedia they've decided. Well, I say for some reason. Of course, there's a reason for it. But they have the date of birth, date of death, and then the official cause of death. And so many of them are drug overdoses. But then every now and then you get one where some of these people they were actually murdered. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, I remember, but I haven't properly looked this up, but I've heard that Kurt Cobain did a cover of The Man Who Sold the World. And I think in an interview sort of after Kurt Cobain's death, sort of David Bowie said how one of his regrets was not going and asking him why he'd written that cover. And I feel like Kurt Cobain might have been one of those people David Bowie might have wanted to have done something with. But I mean, that's something I've heard from someone else sort of say. And
yeah, maybe. I mean, they were both seminal artists, really. I don't want to make it a competition, but David Bowie probably a little bit more. I mean, he's been doing important work and really, really beloved songs since the late 60s. I mean, all the way through the 70s. In the 80s, he definitely had quite a few as well. And it's kind of interesting. And we talked about this before, I think, outside of the podcast once. And you mentioned how his sound changes over the decades, over time. It kind of adapts itself to what are more common tones and sounds from that period. But he always retains that same David Bowie-ness that makes his songs stand out. And I found that really interesting, because I don't think you get many artists like that. Sure, you get plenty of bands and musicians that play music for their whole lives. I mean, I'm not kidding, their whole lives. But I think it's actually a lot more rare than people think to get artists that play music that is popular for, you know, longer than a decade, for longer than 2 decades. I think you've actually got to be able to do something special to be able to adapt to the times, and I think it's also because the times change so much. You know, what was popular in the 70s and what kind of music people liked in the 70s is not the same as the kind of music that people liked in the 80s, basically, because things had changed so much. But David Bowie was still there, making music that was intensely popular throughout those entire periods, and I think that's a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, I mean, he's managed to make some iconic songs throughout his lifetime and sort of be so much, really, it feels. It was interesting when he sort of came back for Day After Tomorrow's Day After Day, something like that. You know, he did an album that was like just under the name David Bowie. Before he then did, I think it is called Black Star. This album. Yeah, and I remember for the album before this one, so not Black Star, my mum and brother, because they're big David Bowie fans, sort of going out and listening to it and sort of saying, oh, there's kind of something missing because, you know, before he'd be like Ziggy Stardust or one of these other characters, and now it's just David Bowie. And by the time you get to Black Star, the fact that it is just David Bowie, I think, is what makes it so powerful and raw.
Yeah, I remember when he died.
Yeah.
And I remember when Prince died, because they died in the same year, and people were listening to their music constantly for ages. I mean, their albums were, you know, not getting as many sales as they did when they were actually released. It was crazy. It was good, obviously, but it was pretty crazy how these kind of revivals can happen. And you know, it sort of makes me wonder a bit, because this is something I've thought about quite a lot, and I've sometimes talked to other people about other people who really like the same music that I do. And it's about Nirvana, because Nirvana had such a short lifespan. I'm trying to remember when they formed, because Dave Grohl wasn't in the original lineup. They had a different drummer. He was called Chad something, I think. I can't quite remember. I think they formed maybe in 87 or 88, I can't remember. And then of course the band split up after Cobain died in 94, and it was such, I mean, they really did something big in the early 90s that changed a lot of things in the music industry. I kind of wonder how things would be different if Cobain hadn't died. And I'm not saying that the band wouldn't have been as successful then, but I think his death and a lot of artists who have died, their work becomes immortalized, doesn't it? Especially if they've just lived, maybe not lived themselves, but their music has lived a short period. I kind of wonder, I don't think Nirvana would be the name they are without Cobain's death. Now, if I had the choice of bringing him back to life or keeping him dead, I would bring him back to life. But I think part of what makes their music so successful, so timeless being the key word, is the fact that it just didn't last, that they had a brief period in the spotlight, and due to tragic circumstances, they didn't have the chance to create more music. They only had 3 studio albums in a short period of about 4 or 5 years, and it's like trying to imagine what Kurt Cobain would look like today, you know, in his mid-50s. I've seen so many photos of him in the 90s, you know, with his short blonde hair. Sometimes when he died at Pink for some of their performances live, he'll always be a 20-year-old, you know. I think these were 2 really good choices, actually, because we had 2 bands and we picked 2 songs by them. I say bands, we had 1 band and 1 artist, and 2 songs by them. And there is a lot of similarities between those songs, but I think it's cool that one of them had such a long, first of all, period in the spotlight, but also a long musical career, and the other one almost never had that chance to grow or evolve into something different. And I honestly think Nirvana's music would have probably suffered for it. I think they were grunge musicians, and their music belonged in a specific time, a particular time, and I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about how their music would have changed. They had been playing in the 2000s, or 2010, whatever. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, wondering how things might otherwise have been.
And wondering if he hadn't died that day, he probably would have died sometime sooner, sometime later, I meant to say. Yeah. So what did you think about this episode?
Yeah, I think this was quite good. It was nice to focus in on like 2 songs and 2 videos and the sort of the visual. And I think it worked out quite nicely, the themes you had between the two.
It did, yeah. I'm sorry that I told you about Heart Shape with such a short notice, but you managed to find one that I think complemented it really, really well. So next time when we do the second episode, you do the first pick, and I'll try and find something that complements it in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, whoever's listening to this, I hope that you enjoyed it. Probably Harry. He's going to be the one editing these. Fuck doing that ourselves.
No, I think I'll try and edit it, actually.
All right. Well, I guess me and Johnny will see you next time for episode 2, and you'll find out about the next albums, the next songs that we pick then.
Still in Music Mates mode.
Still in music mates mode, yeah.
See you next episode.
See you next episode.